Welcome to Literacy Adventures with Ali. I hope you are going to enjoy today's adventure because it's very important and a topic that many people have actually requested me to address. Today's adventure will be all about commonly confused words. These are pairs of words that either have similar spellings or they sound the same, which is why they create a confusion between users of the English language. And I have tried my best to clarify as many pairs of commonly confused words in the English language as possible. So happy learning, and I hope you enjoy today's adventure and you will like and subscribe to my channel and will join me in all of my future adventures as well. If you want to know more about me, you can check out my bio in the About section of my channel. Or if you work in an institution and want me to conduct training sessions for your students or your staff, then you may contact me at the email address shown on the screen. You can also contact me if you want me to make a video on a particular topic for you. So, let's get started with today's adventure. Today we are going to learn about commonly confused words in the English language. The first pair of words that most people get confused between is it's and its. The one on the left is a contraction, which means it's a combination of two words, it and is. The other one is a possessive adjective. For example, if I say that is a chair, its color is blue. The trick here is to remember whenever you get confused between with the apostrophe or without the apostrophe, just ask yourself, is it talking about belonging? Like the example that I just gave you, that is a chair. If I write and add apostrophe in this, will it make sense? That is a chair. Its color is blue, which does not make sense at all. So that means here, its will be used without an apostrophe as one word. The next pair of word is whose versus whose. Both are pronounced the same way, but one is a contraction of two words, who is or who has, whereas the other one is actually the possessive form of who, and we use whose, WHOSE, for people when we want to indicate a certain thing that belongs to them. For example, whose bag is that? Introduce me to your friend whose father is a doctor. Remember, WHO apostrophe S is always a contraction of either of the two words, who is or who has. For example, who's got my pencil? Or who's that tall girl? The next pair of confusing words is then versus than. I have heard a lot of people use THEN when they are using adjectives to compare, which is wrong. Remember, these two separate words have two separate meanings and two separate pronunciations. So you can't say he's taller than, you will have to say he is taller than. So THA is pronounced than and THE is pronounced then. We use then when time is involved. For example, we went to the supermarket, then we went to the cinema. Whereas THAN than is always used when we are comparing two things. For example, he is taller than her, or her house is bigger than mine. The next pair of words is accept versus accept. One is with an A, which is why we pronounce it as accept, and the other one is written with an E, and we pronounce it as accept. The one with the A means to believe, to receive, or say, yes, I accept your offer. And with the E, it means accept this. For example, I like all the dresses in this shop except this one. The next pair of confusing word is
Let's versus let's. One is with the apostrophe, the other is without. Let's start with the one on the left. Let's means to allow. For example, my mother lets me sit on the bed with my shoes on. So here we will use lets with an S with third person singular, right? For example, he, she, or it. He lets me, it lets me, she lets me, right? But the one on the right is a contraction of two words, let us. For example, let's go to the mall. Let's go to the cinema. Let's go to the park. The next pair of word is breath versus breathe. Remember when we put E at the end, we always stretch and pronounce it as breathe. But without the E, we pronounce it as breath. Breath is a noun and stands for the lovely air that goes into and out of our lungs, and it rhymes with seth, like breath. So, breath is the air that you breathe, but the act of breathing air is breathe. So, breathe is a verb that describes the action of breathing, whereas breath itself is air and a noun. The next is not a pair, but in fact four different words, all of which are very commonly confused. The first one is cloth, the second is clothe, the third is clothed, and the fourth one is clothes or clothing. The first one is cloth, which is a piece of fabric. It could be a loose fabric, and for example, we will go to buy cloth for his suit today. The next is clothe, right? So when we add E at the end of cloth, we stretch the word and it becomes clothe. Clothe means to provide someone with clothes. For example, it's not easy to feed and clothe two young girls as a single mom. The third one is clothed, which means someone who is wearing clothes. For example, George went swimming fully clothed. The fourth one is actually pronounced clothes. For example, the T and the H are often not pronounced individually. So we don't say clothes, we say clothes. And clothes or clothing both mean stitched garments in general. So ready-made garments like shirts and t-shirts and pants and dresses, these are known as clothes which we wear. For example, this store sells women's clothing or women's clothes. The next pair is loose versus lose. Remember, where we add double O, we pronounce the S as S, but where we write the single O, we actually pronounce the S as Z. So loose versus lose. The one with the double O, loose, means something that is not tight. So it's the opposite of tight. So LOSE, lose, means the opposite of found, when you have lost something. I don't want to lose the race. Whereas your bracelet is too loose. The next pair is also very commonly confused, and a lot of people think that these are actually two versions of the same word, but they are not. They have very different meanings. The one on the left is uninterested. That means when someone is not interested in something. Whereas disinterested, which is actually a word, means when someone is impartial or someone has no personal involvement or receiving no personal advantage, and therefore they're unbiased and they're impartial. That's what disinterested actually means. The next pair is advice versus advise. So the one with the C actually has the S sound, advice, but the one with the S actually has the Z sound, like advise. The one with the C is a noun and it means to give a suggestion. For example, he always gives me good advice. However, the other one with the S, advise, is a verb and it means the act of giving advice. For example, the doctor has advised me to rest. Will you please advise me on this matter? So remember, one is a noun and one is a verb. The next pair is affect or effect. Affect with an A or effect with an E. Affect is a verb with an A and it means to influence or make a difference. Effect means to result or influence, but effect is actually a noun. For example, the goal had a big effect on the whole match, whereas the weather severely affected the wedding day. The next pair is further versus farther. This is very simple, but it can be confusing because both words are quite similar. We cannot use them interchangeably because the one with the A, farther, is used for physical distance that can be measured. For example, he lives farther away from my house. Whereas further with the U is used to measure figurative distance. That means distance that cannot be measured. For example, further to our meeting yesterday, I would like to add that. So, a meeting cannot actually be physically measured, therefore, I'm using further with the U. Whereas for distance, I'm using a farther. Remember, the pronunciation of both the words is also different. The next pair is alternate versus alternative. Alternate means every other one. For example, the doctor sits at his clinic on alternate days. That means he sits on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Whereas alternative means a choice. So, for example, I'm sorry, but I don't have any other alternative but to punish you. The next pair is fiancé. Now, please remember, many people are confused and they think that these two words are pronounced differently. But no, fiancé is a fiancé, whether it's a man or a woman. The only difference is in writing. Remember, the one with the single E is used for a male and the one with the double E is used for a female. So if you are a man, you are going to refer to your fiance with a double E in writing. And if you are a woman, you will refer to your fiance with a single E in writing. But in pronunciation, both will be pronounced exactly the same. The next one is stationary. Stationary with an A means standing still and not moving, whereas the one with the E means pencils, erasers, sharpeners, tapes, and so on and so forth. The next pair is beside and besides. Beside means next to. For example, his bed is beside mine. Whereas the word besides with an S at its end is an adverb. It means in addition to. For example, besides milk and cheese, we need vegetables. The next pair is suit versus sweet. Remember, the one with the E at the end is pronounced sweet. The word suit has several meanings in the English language. One is a formal outfit worn by men, like the one the man is wearing in the picture. The second is short for lawsuit. So if you don't want to say the whole word lawsuit, people usually say suit. In this sense, it is used as a noun and it should not be confused with to sue or suing someone, which are verbs. The third situation in which we use the word suit is when something is suitable or works well for someone. For example, this type of work suits him. The other word is a suite, which means a set of rooms. Usually in hotels, when a bedroom is attached to a living room and a dining area, it is known as a suite. The next pair is break. One break is break and the other break is brake. The one on the left with the e and the a means to separate something into bits and pieces. For example, the lunch break, which is separate from the rest of the day, or break something like a vase. The one on the right is usually used for cars or vehicles. For example, when the light turns red, you have to brake. The next word is story. These are two separate words with the same pronunciation but two very different meanings. The one without the E is a tale or a narrative, but the one with the E is actually the level of a building. So I live in a four-story building. So I'll use the one with the E in this particular sentence. But I like the way he told the story. Here I'll use the one without the E. The next pair is also interesting and sometimes creates a confusion in second language users. The one on the left is pronounced envelope and the one on the right is pronounced envelope. Remember, it is not envelope, it's envelope. And the one on the left is envelope. Envelope means to engulf or wrap. So that means I decided to envelop my teddy bear in a large towel. Envelope, on the other hand, we all know is a piece of office stationery in which we send letters and correspondence. The next pair is past and past. Past past is most often used as a noun or an adjective that refers to history, what has happened in prior times. Whereas PASSED past is a verb form that tells you that something has either already happened or has traveled by. Let's take a look at the example sentences to understand the difference between these two words closely. The one on the left, past past. Today we will read about past events, that means historical events. I have worked at a bank in the past, that means I have worked at this bank in historic times or in the past times. Let's meet at 3:30. This once again can be used for telling time as well. Now let's take a look at PASSED examples. The visitors passed through the town. So they actually traveled through the town. He passed me the spoon at the dinner table. So he physically passed and the spoon traveled from one place to another into my hands. She has passed her driving exam. So this is the second meaning of the word pass, as in the opposite of fail. The next word is also very interesting and can be sometimes confusing. This pair is petrol versus petrol. Remember petrol versus petrol. Petrol on the left is a fuel for engines in vehicles, whereas petrol with the A means to keep a watch over an area by walking, riding, or driving around in a car. Let's take a look at the examples. The one on the left says, the petrol tank seems empty. And the one on the right says, the police patrol our street every night. The next pair is also very interesting and confusing. A lot of people think these are two ways of spelling the same word, but they are indeed not. The one on the left is pronounced as later, and the one on the right is pronounced as latter. Later means at a later time, but latter means the one that comes afterwards. For example, I love the latter part of the movie. That means the part that came after the intermission or towards the end. However, we will go to the mall later, at a later time. Can you help me bake a cake and clean the house? So I'm asking someone to help me with two chores. So that person answers, I can help you with the former, which means the first one. In this case, it means baking a cake, but not the latter. That means they cannot help me with cleaning the house. The next pair is complement. They are both pronounced in the same way, but one complement is written with an I and the other complement is written with an E. The complement with an E is used for something that supplements something else quite well. For examples, your earrings complement your dress. That means they make your dress pop out or look nice or look better. John and Jane complement each other. This does not mean that John and Jane spend the whole day giving compliments to one another. It means that they work well together and they look good together. The second one, which is written with an I, means when someone says something nice about you and they give you a compliment. For example, Bob gave me a compliment yesterday and my dad complimented me on my good behavior. The next pair is emigrate versus immigrate. Please remember that when you leave your home country and you go somewhere else, then you are emigrating from your home country. But whichever country you are moving to, you are immigrating to that country. So let's say if I am emigrating from Pakistan and I am going or immigrating to Canada. A lot of people believe that crocodile and alligator are two names of the same animal, but that's not the case. There are slight differences in their physical appearance, which is why they are known as these two different names. A crocodile is an animal that has a much narrower snout and mouth, whereas an alligator is the one that has a much wider and rounder mouth. Thank you so much for joining me on today's adventure. Till next time, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you.